And it's Wednesday, and it's Leading Women Wednesday, Leading Women Weekly. I'm Yalanda at Dryer Bus over there. I got it right that time.
Yep.
Is Angela Stalker. Guys, this is where we interrupt all the broadcasts that y'all are out there. Whatever you're consuming during this time on a Wednesday, just stop. And I'm going to lean into the light a little bit. Stop and come and hang out with us. This is where we really look at the world genderly, if that's a word.
I like it, gingerly and genderly.
Yeah, specific to women. What's going on? We want to talk about what we're earning, what we're learning, and we're going to try and burn through some topics. And usually, Angela and I have a little get together prior to, but we're coming in blind.
Yep.
We're coming in blind this week, Angela, and I'm going to tell you what I did. And you know me, I try to be consistent because I need routine, right? But today, well, I took yesterday was one of my burn days where okay, I don't care what needs to get done, it ain't getting done today. That was yesterday.
Right.
So today, and there's my phone. I'm telling my daughter to bring me some vinegar. I got some oxtails in my slow cooker over here. So today I did what I said I don't need to do. Is that me in my
That was
ear?
me. That was me. I was sharing, and what I love is that I had just like the worst expression on my face. The freeze frame is just like.
But let me tell you, normally I just kind of sit around each morning on Wednesday. You know, I try not to let too much in because I know we have to talk about what we're going to talk about. I try not to. Let me tell you, I have watched television shows. I have listened to the radio. I've listened to the wrong radio show. I've been all up in the patriarchy, the locker room talk. I tried to make soap. 2 out of 3 ain't bad. Something was wrong with one of my batches, and so I'm in a conversation about that. You know, and I'm like, now you're supposed to wait till after the show to do any of that. But of course, I needed to get my dinner on. And I hate sitting here broadcasting with this slow cooker right next to me because it smells so good.
I bet it does. And I tell you, I'm guilty of the same. As I ended up on a phone call with a friend of mine who's former military asking, should I be worried about what's happening with the Defense Department? So his short answer
asking is you?
No, I was asking him. I'm like, should I be worried? He's like, no.
No.
He's like, and don't do what everybody's been doing for 5 years. He said, don't give attention to things that don't need attention. Yeah. And I was like, very, very good reminder. He's like, the Army is not gonna roll into the streets. And I was like, this is what I was thinking.
And that's one of the major concerns we have.
Like, Twitter got me going. And so there was some announcement, right? And it was about the Special Operations Civilian Director. And I was like, what does this mean? Because I said, I don't know what this means. And I said, people think this means, you know, that to be able to turn the troops on Americans. And he said, that's not what that means at all. He said, and he's explaining to me what that meant. But he's like, and that's the problem, is that people hear something, they don't understand the full meaning of it. And I'm like, we've been going through this, right? And part of it, and part of my concern, as we're in this, I think you sent me a message. It was like, sort of like, God, it was just so nice to just not have anything like being like on fire, right? And just to take a breath, right? And everybody's sort of taking a breath now. Yet we've gotten so used to being like on alert, like and looking. Gotta stay alert. Gotta be, what's coming, gotta be looking. That, it's like a PTSD, that I'm worried that we're going to start creating things to be worried about. When there's plenty of things that we should be not worried about, but just aware of and focused on, right?
Yeah.
And that's different, right? That's different. So I was like, I could feel that coming on me. So it's funny when you had messaged me, I was like, I'm on the phone call with this guy's in the military, and I'm like, what should I know? And I'm like, yeah, this is not what and literally I thought, don't do this before the show, right? Because that's not where you want your mind to be. And I'm like, oh, but I don't know. So, I mean, I think that, what you're describing, I'm like, is this sort of thing that the other, I think, probably what's happening with you is the thing that's happened with me, is that especially getting through the election and sort of feeling like we can take a breath, is I've got 500 things.
Now there you are in my ear.
Now, so I got 500 things undone, right? Like I got a list of things I need to do, right? And try to get done, you know, in the next 2 weeks, in the next month, before the end of the year, right?
What I just heard before coming on is, you know, they said that naturally, because I mean, we're in the season of change of power, that they're saying, you know that you're panicking if you are thinking about months from now.
Right.
That's not where you need to be. And that's how we need to gauge whether or not we're overreacting.
Right.
Is if you're just thinking, oh, well, next week, 2 weeks from now, that's fine. It's okay. But if you have gone so far into 2021, you know, and we're starting to hear, okay, things are being postponed and canceled, vaccines and all that stuff coming and all that. But if you, as far as your household, as far as your family, if you're not just thinking about Thanksgiving, you're probably overreacting. If you're not just thinking about, you know, your Christmas arrangements, you might be overreacting. And, you know, with you and I both, and you being a caregiver, me having been a caregiver, and also anybody that's, you know, in charge of a household, a matriarch, the patriarch, whatever the downline is from you as an individual. If you have already gotten 6 months ahead, you probably you're going to the grocery store for the next 6 months.
Right.
You've gone too far. You've gone too far, you know. And I know you live near one of our military bases. I know what that is like, because it's a heightened, because that means that your neighbors are probably also military, and you're seeing them coming and going. So, you know,
and I tell you, sometimes there'll be increased activity, you know. So I live near an Air Force base, and we are not on the side which is typically the, you know, the landing zone. We'll hear aircraft, but sometimes,
I used to live on that landing side. They used to fly right over.
Yeah. Sometimes it shifts, and we're right in the zone, and so it'll be you know, plane after plane after plane, and here comes helicopters and whatever, and it is triggering. And it does make something happening. It's just sometimes it's the direction of the wind, right? It's like you know, but we don't have that. We, like I say, we're not normally in that approach path. So I mean, it's that sort of thing, like you say, that in the past you might not have even thought about it, but it's like, what's happening? But I think, you know, like I said, we're talking about going an hour. I'm like, maybe we can find things to talk about. Although I do want to spend a little time talking about what's happening here in Georgia, because it has taken me 2 weeks to figure out what the heck is happening. I still am not clear. And anybody who's watching this who knows anything about the Public Service Commissioner election, just please tell me, how do we vote on that?
Here's my thing: the yesterday's update, it was on for so long. I'm like, it was so detailed.
When I saw you, I was like, girl, I was on there too, and I finally just had to get off. I'm like, what am I hearing? Right. And and I'm like, yeah, but continue.
It was really like a Zoom call on television and on the computers. And we've never, I won't say we've never seen that, because of course we saw it during the Bush years and during the Bush election. And then also, who was the other one? The one who said he invented the internet? Well, Gore. We saw it during the Gore. That was Gore and
Bush v. Gore. Yeah,
Bush Gore. Okay. So we've seen it before. Well, a couple of generations behind us didn't, but we've seen it before. But again, just not to this level. And it was even on again this morning. But you were saying, how do we vote for which position?
PSC, Public Service Commissioner, because that election got changed, right? So we, just on top of the fact that we have to do a runoff for the Senate, which is very important, you know, we know is nationally important, and everybody needs to make sure that's January 5th. There are other runoffs that are on January 5th, but Georgia, going to Georgia, we also have a runoff on December 1st, right? And so there are certain elections. Now there is one.
Now who's in December 1st?
So the runoff for the short-term filling of John Lewis's seat. So the one with Kwanzaa Hall, and I don't know who's running against him. So
let me give you a funny story before you explain that. We were driving, my daughter and I were driving, and now of course our mind is on, we got to go back to the polls, right? So we were driving and we started seeing all these signs for Kwanzaa, and this little word, tiny word, runoff. My daughter, I'm driving and my daughter goes, I just saw it said runoff, because we saw Kwanzaa, and okay, you know, we live in Georgia, we live in Atlanta, outside Atlanta, guys, so we feel like we know these people. And I was like, we were like, well, why is Kwanzaa signs still up, right? And my daughter said, Mom, it said runoff. This is us driving down trying to look at the sign because we were prepared for the January. So it's again, you're thinking you could let your guard down a little bit. And I'm like, whoa, that's why. And then we were like, okay, well, why the signs here? And I'm trying to figure out even where we were. I think we were going to my dad's is when we saw the sign.
Right. So that is to fill John Lewis's seat until January 20th, right? So
but that's a particular district. That's not
that is a particular district. That's not me and you, right?
Okay.
There's another one, and I don't know who it's for, but the one that is for everybody in the state is the Public Service Commissioner. There's 3 Public Service Commissioners, and they are responsible for the utilities and for like setting utility prices and so forth. Well, there's a runoff. These have always been Republican seats. And then I guess there was a big enough Democratic turnout that one of the guy that was up this time, who's a Republican, got enough of a challenge that they're going to have a runoff. That was also supposed to be December 1st. But because of the recount, Raffensperger and company postponed that, has pushed that to the same January 5th election. So I don't know if that's on the January 5th ballot. Now, if you're going to go do early voting here in Georgia starts December 14th for early in-person voting. If you're voting absentee, you can go ahead and the ballots should have been mailed or should start going out. Now, I think the 18th is the day they'd start mailing absentee ballots. Don't hesitate if you're going to do, absentee voting. But if you're going to do absentee voting for December 1st, right, it's going to be really tight. So you want to be aware of it. So I don't know. So this is where I've not been able to find information. I'm pretty good at finding information. Is with the change of that Public Service Commission vote, is it now on the January 5th ballot? Is it a second separate ballot, right? Because if you use the Georgia online requesting portal, right, they've launched this new thing. You can only get the ballot for January 5th. It does not give you any ballots for December 1st. So say all that to say that's a lot of talking. It behooves everyone to just look and see, do you have anything coming up on December 1st? I believe that Public Service Commissioner race is going to be on that same ballot of January 5th. However, in my quest, someone sent me information because I thought, well, I just need to go to the candidate websites. The candidates will tell me how to vote for them. So somebody actually invited me to a virtual meet and greet with the Democratic candidate for PSC. And I said, well, that right there will probably give me my information. And they'll tell me, how do I vote absentee? So, we're just to this point where it's extremely complicated, right? But the uncomplicated piece is, if you are in Georgia, you need to make arrangements to make sure that you can participate in that January 5th runoff between Reverend Warnock and Kelly. What I want to call her
Kelly Loeffler.
I want to call her Kellyanne Loeffler. All those blondes are the same. I'm sorry, all those blondes are the same. But yeah, Kelly Loeffler, and then John Ossoff and David Perdue. And so and I feel like, and I don't know about you, I don't feel any heat on that right now. Like I'm getting, my phone is blowing up.
Oh,
I'm getting invited to every kind of rally, the Democratic rallies. I'm getting hit up by pollsters. I have, I basically have 3 phone numbers. All 3 of my lines are blowing out with
I keep getting this text like they're so friendly. Like I know them, and I'm like, whoa.
No, and this is exactly what they're doing is volunteering. Then I'm being asked to volunteer. And I might volunteer with a campaign. And the way they're doing these texts is that it would be somebody like me or you, and they give me a list of numbers and names, and you're supposed to reach out to them individually. So if you're in Georgia, you're going to get a ton of these.
What was interesting about the election, though? One of my daughters got a text that her sister had not voted yet.
Yeah.
She was like, and again, it's somebody in your household, because I know that when the political mail comes, they are both listed together.
See, I think people are going to be very shocked if you don't already know how much information about you becomes public when you vote.
Process.
And so it is the way you vote is private; it's secret ballot, but that you voted. And information around you, including your address, is not private. And in fact, in the time right before the deadline, so that would have been the first Friday after the election, when you still had time to cure your ballot, like if an absentee ballot and the signature was wrong, a lot of people didn't sign in the right place, they're missing a signature. Somebody created a program based on public information, and this was information about people who needed to cure their ballots. And
I'm sorry, I promise my volume is like turned down. I don't know why. I can still hear my phone. You see, I'm over here like trying to turn it off. Yeah. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So, but you could. So, and this was like, just like somebody put this app together, and it said, check and see if your neighbors need to cure their ballots, and you could drill. It's like you drilled down, and it was thousands of dots because there were thousands of ballots statewide. What in the heck? Go ahead.
Okay. Go ahead. No, go ahead. No.
So, and it showed people's names, their addresses, and why their ballot had been rejected. So I'm like, that's like your name and address were out there. Like somebody could come knock on your door, right? So I think that, again, your phone number, if you provide your phone number, it's all public record. And I'm not opposed to that. I just think people don't know. And then it's shocking. You say, you get a message that your sister didn't vote. You're like, excuse me, how do you know my sister didn't vote?
We have to continue to remind people, because of the process that was needed this year because of COVID-19 is why we're seeing all of these things. When you register to vote, you granted certain permissions. And that's one of the things when we think about privacy, you've got to understand that now in your terms of service for this, that, and the other, the agreements, the boxes you check, the boxes you don't check, all of that relates to some type of permission that you are giving people and what they can and cannot do with your information. And they have teams of litigations and so forth that decide on these factors. And so the only reason why it seems like this election is different, because this election was different, and everything that was put in place for a time such as this was utilized. Somebody coming and knocking on your door saying that, hey, they received your ballot, something wasn't right.
There's a problem.
There's a problem. Let's fix it because we have a deadline. People, and then too, the fact that it was so important, there were more lenses. People were looking in and showing you, content-wise, it was exciting to see that this is how our governance works. Right. We just had never had to use it to this avail. In years past. So, and I think even if, everything, quote unquote, ever goes back to normal, I think that we should want this kind of scrutiny over this process, because it is just that important. And we probably was one of the few countries that didn't take voting as serious as we should have. Other countries, this is how they handle elections all the time.
Well, in fact, for example, Australia, if you don't vote, if you are a citizen and you are qualified to vote and you don't vote, you are subject to fine. You're subject to a penalty, right? It's like you're required. They require voting. Many countries require citizens to vote. Now, it's it's not a lot of money that people have to pay, but it's like you have to opt out. You have to willingly opt out of the voting system.
Don't want.
In Canada, when you get 18, you're registered to vote. There's no. I saw somebody from Canada say, "Well, I don't even understand what this voter registration is. I just go and vote, right?" And it's like, no, it's automatic. So, and why does this country make it hard to vote? Because, again,
because there's so much power in it. It's so much power in it. Yeah,
baked in, right? And it was to keep Black people from voting. So let's just call that. But
we like to say it's to keep Black people from voting, because that's how we manipulate emotions of the country. But it's to keep everybody from voting.
It's to keep everybody from voting, right? And it's to keep whoever.
What came down in Georgia, voter suppression. They said that Trump, and the Secretary of State said what actually happened is that Trump and all this fear mongering that he did out there, he suppressed his own voters. You know, saying that the lovers of the Confederacy and all this were going to be at the polls. Guess who didn't want to be bothered with them? Republican voters. So, they requested the ballots. They didn't turn in their ballots. They didn't show up at the poll, because we know that these are the people who really get bullied. They bully their own kind. Well, and so they didn't show up, because trying to get Black people not to vote, we've dealt with this, honey. I ain't got no problem going up there with Billy Bob and his monster truck, I'm gonna park right next to him, and I'm walking on in with him and his gun talk. This is what I have to vote with. I have to park next to the monster truck. I have to listen to 6 feet away. The gun talk. Can't wait to go in there vote for this. It was ridiculous. But I still showed up. But guess who didn't show up? The Republican who didn't want to be bothered with it. That's really afraid of that because that's their true neighbor, family member, perhaps. So here we are.
Well, that's it, and I think that's exactly right.
Still an important mission, guys.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And when I say that, I don't feel a lot of heat. People were prior to November 3rd.
No, I thought you were going to say. Well, when you say you don't feel a lot of heat, I thought you were saying there wasn't a lot of outreach to you.
No.
But you do see the outreach. Okay.
Absolutely. What I mean is I'm not hearing people talking about it. Like everybody was talking. Like I've never heard so much talking in my life with just strangers of what their voting plan was, how they're going to vote, when they're going to vote, what what about this, what about this, how about this, how about that.
And you're saying you want to continue to hear that for the runoff.
I'm not hearing like everybody knew the date. Everybody knew. Go ahead. I think people are a little worn out.
They are worn out. And we got a little bit of a break. We do get to enjoy the holiday season. So I think it's going to amp back up, right? I mean, we even got New Year's, you got Thanksgiving, you got Christmas, you got New Year's, probably even, I don't even know when the Super Bowl is. I don't know how that's going to happen. I wish it was just a couple of weeks away. I think we should have to go right back. I don't think it should be that much time. That's part of the problem. Because by the time this runoff comes, it's like a couple of weeks, if anything, before the actual inauguration, So it should be going right back to the poll, not waiting. Right. I don't know why we're waiting. And guys, let me just send out a couple of things for those of you that are watching in the original post. Please make your comments. If we didn't send out any invites to join us today because hey, we had a lot to do this week. If you like to come on screen with us, inbox me. I do keep my inbox open, and I will shoot you the link. I see Tati's in and saying hello, and some of our favorites are in and out, and also some of you are on the watch parties. We do start a number of watch parties, but if you go over to Leading Women Weekly, my profile, Angela's profile, you will see the original link to the original broadcast, and we can actually see and shout you out in your supporting of the show. So thank you guys so much for that. Also, immediately thereafter, this will become a podcast. There's a link down there under Angela that says leadingwomenweekly.com. If this is your first time seeing it, or if you want to pitch and come on the show, we do have guest segments, usually around about 2:00 timestamp in the show. We bring on a guest. Didn't schedule anyone today because, again, like Angela said, everybody's pretty much, burnt out. We're not all, not all talked out. I know one thing Angela wants to talk about today.
Wait.
Look, you need 2 arms to reach for that thing. And there it is. All right. And of course, myself, I am going with the the audio version. Shall I play a sample, Angela?
Please do, because it's so good. Of course, I have the audio and the book. So
I know. Everybody's. I got to go get the book. I think it deserves. Wait, show people the multitude of pages. In
7. Okay, let's see again.
Are you
701? 701 is the text. And then it's got acknowledgments and an index. So thankfully it's got an index.
Show the bulkiness of the book.
See if you can see.
Come over a little bit. There you go. Okay, that's an encyclopedia.
And it's heavy. I mean, it's got, and it's weighty, but outside it's like a weighted blanket. It's just like, oh, this is going to be full of good stuff. It's got 2 sets. Does it have photos?
Oh, okay. I was going to say they have photos. Okay.
Yeah. And in fact, let me show you the one that I was like, oh, look at this one. Oh, wait.
Oh,
get it straight.
Yeah.
Of Baby Bear. They call him.
See.
They call him Bar. But, and his mom. I was like, oh. And I looked at this on my mom's birthday. So I got the
That's right. Your mom's birthday was this week. So I know you had
this. I was like, but anyway, this thing right here, like I can barely hold it in one hand. I was like, I should keep it by my bed. If anybody ever came in, you could just whack them with it. But
And he covers a lot. What are some of the chapters in this?
So this actually starts, he sort of recaps his childhood. This is now his third memoir. He does a recap of the child, and so I'm still in the first part. So the first part's called The Bet, and that's basically getting them up to the election, right? So he does a recap of his youth, recap of meeting Michelle, the Senate, being in the Illinois Senate, and sort of his perspective. And if you read Becoming, it's interesting to see how those parallel. He mentions certain incidents that she did that were monumental in their relationship. And so then they move into the election, and they go through all the way to 2011. And I don't think I'm going to spoil the end. Spoiler: they get Bin Laden. So this ends with the raid on Bin Laden in 2011. So basically, it covers his first term. So maybe a good section, right, which is what I'm looking here, about 70 pages related to stuff we've already heard about, backstory, then moving in through the election and through the first term of governing. And then this is part one of two, maybe, right? Because this was supposed to be, what I love is that he starts out and he says, this book was supposed to be 500 pages and take a year to write. He said, this is 700 pages of one volume of what will probably be 2 volumes. And it took 4 years to write. And it's because he really is trying to contemplate on what happened, and he's a very good writer, and it's very descriptive. And he said, I really wanted people to feel what it was like to be there. And I think you really, at least I'm getting a sense of that. And
that's what I love about how they now tell the story of being, America's president and first lady, because we really could not get a true sense of that while they were in office, because, it had to come secondhand, So this is like firsthand knowledge and a memoir. I'm going to play. Let me get my volume back up here before I hit play, and I'll play a little bit and see if we can. Y'all know
you are listening to that on double speed.
I'm always on the speed. Let me take it back to regular speed. Okay, let me take it back. All right, here we go.
I began writing this book shortly after the end of my presidency, after Michelle and I had boarded Air Force One for the last time and traveled west for a long-deferred break. The mood on the plane was bittersweet. Both of us were drained, physically and emotionally, not only by the labors of the previous 8 years, but by the unexpected result of an election in which someone diametrically opposed to everything we stood for had been chosen as my successor. Still, having run our leg of the race to completion, we took satisfaction in knowing that we'd done our very best, and that however much I'd fallen short as president, whatever projects I'd hoped but failed to accomplish, the country was in better shape now than it had been when I'd started. For a month, Michelle and I slept late, ate leisurely dinners, went for long walks, swam in the ocean, took stock, replenished our friendship, rediscovered our love, and planned for a less eventful but hopefully no less satisfying second act. And by the time I was ready to get back to work and sat down with a pen and yellow pad, I still like writing things out in longhand, finding that a computer gives even my roughest drafts too smooth a gloss and lends half-baked thoughts the mask of tidiness.
That line right
I had
there.
A clear outline of the book in my head. First and foremost, I hoped to give an honest rendering of my time in office. Not just a historical record of key events that happened on my watch and important figures with whom I interacted, but also an account of some of the political, economic, and cultural crosscurrents that helped determine the challenges my administration faced and the choices my team and I made in response. Where possible, I wanted to offer readers a sense of what it's like to be the President of the United States. I wanted to pull the curtain back a bit and remind people that, for all its power and pomp, the presidency is still just a job, and our federal government is a human enterprise like any other. And the men and women who work in the White House experience the same daily mix of satisfaction, disappointment, office friction, screw-ups, and small triumphs as the rest of their fellow citizens. Finally, I want to tell a more personal story that might inspire young people considering a life of public service. How my career in politics really started with a search for a place to fit in, a way to explain the different strands of my mixed-up heritage, and how it was only by hitching my wagon to something larger than myself that I was ultimately able to locate a community and purpose for my life. I figured I could do all that in maybe 500 pages. I expect it to be done in a year. It's fair to say that the writing process didn't go exactly as I planned. Despite my best intentions, the book kept growing in length and scope. The reason why I eventually decided to break it into 2 volumes. I am painfully aware that a more gifted writer could have found a way to tell the same story with greater brevity. After all, my home office in the White House sat right next to the Lincoln bedroom, where a signed copy of the 272-word Gettysburg Address rests beneath a glass case. But each time I sat down to write, whether it was to describe the early phases of my campaign, or my administration's handling of the financial crisis, or negotiations with the Russians on nuclear arms control, or the forces that led to the Arab Spring.
Okay, Mr. President, he got another minute. That's actually about a 4-minute sample, y'all. And as you can see, our president goes on and on and on.
Oh, and I love it. I'm like, yeah. Why use? I love that our president is Barack Obama.
Zach said, Michelle and I watch paint dry and water pots boil. But I love when he said, I thought about you immediately when he said, our government is still human. What was his language he used?
Yeah,
human. What did he say, Angela? Because I wanted to hold on to that.
By the time I was ready to get back to cultural cross-currents.
Let me see.
I got it. Yep, our federal government. You're going to go back to it?
No, go ahead.
Our federal government is a human enterprise. I have that
human enterprise,
like any other. And the men and the women who work in the White House experience the same daily mix of satisfaction, disappointment, office friction, scripts, and small triumphs as the rest of their fellow citizens. A human enterprise. And I go again. This is where we go back. The economy is people. The government is people. We detach from these institutions and forget that it's all of this is people. And I think this idea of the humanity, and this is what really, to me, anytime you read Barack Obama, is he's very key to humanity and the human experience, including his own, right? I mean, just his little line there about writing on a yellow pad because I tell it, finding a computer gives even my roughest drafts too smooth a gloss and lends half-baked thoughts the mark of tidiness. And I'm like, who says this? But I'm like, but I love it. Give me more.
I know.
So yeah, I mean, it's so far. I'm not that I've read the first few chapters and I'm listening. I'm toggling back and forth between the book and reading the book and listening to the audio. But it is really nice just to have a big old book in your hand. That there is something about that. That's not homework. But I want to share, if I can, like so far, my favorite section so far is actually just in that. So you were reading from the introduction. Oh gosh, and I turned away from it. Yeah, here it is. This is page 10, and he's talking about being in college, and he says, looking back, it's embarrassing to realize the degree to which my intellectual curiosity those first 2 years of college paralleled the interest of various women I was attempting to get to know. Marx and Marcuse, so I had something to say to the long-legged socialist who lived in my dorm. Fannin and Gwendolyn Brooks for the smooth-skinned sociology major who never gave me a second look. Foucault and Woolf for the ethereal bisexual who were mostly black. As a strategy for picking up girls, my pseudo-intellectualism proved mostly worthless. I found myself in a series of affectionate but chaste friendships. I was like, I appreciate these player moves. I said, this is the game that I'm in, right?
And that goes back to what Michelle said about him when we were at the Michelle Obama Becoming event. I mean, he really does think he's a smooth guy, and he is a very smooth guy. And it's so I always hear women say that they are trying not to be attracted to Michelle Obama's husband.
Yes,
you hear that a lot. You hear people say that.
And I just think it's so funny though, because he's clearly an intellectual. And I say about him, his turn on his brains, right? He loves reading in books and talking about ideas. And so, he's thinking these girls are going to, these young women are going to respond to his braininess. And it's like, it's literally, they're like, boy, we talk books all day. I'm like, I'm not looking to be in that space on a date
all the
right?
time,
I was
right?
like, oh, he could have dated me. I'd have been like, let's talk Foucault. My God, yes. That to me, I was like, when I was just like, hey, want to come back to my dorm and talk about Foucault? And I'm like, and they were like, no. And I was like, to me, that's like, I'm like, I love it. But I just love the fact that it's like, yeah, he clearly he improved his game because he got Michelle.
Yeah.
But
and then once you settle on one, you don't have to worry about your game anymore.
No, you don't have to worry about your game.
You don't
But
have to worry
I
about
just
game.
I love that that visual of this nerdy bookish boy, and he's like, oh, I'm gonna take this class so I can talk to her, and it's like,
and I think there was a part because that part came so easy to him.
Yeah.
What he had to work on was being the other thing trying to be the jock and all those other things because that's a very natural side of him because of his aspect of how he breaks down the humanist and all in all things. That was the easy part for him. I think that's why he related so well in the position. Now I'm okay with the photo, because how I am.
I know
I'm okay with it. It's serving a little bit of almost like a bust, but I still would love dead on.
I know really would look at the back,
and I saw that. I wasn't real happy with that one, but I'm like,
But I also understand that it's like saying you're kind of looking over his shoulder
when you know what's out there and he's getting ready to go back out into the world. I love a couple of interviews because he's already done a number of interviews, and he talked about the one story he talked about when he was being driven somewhere after being president, and the car stopped, and he was like, why are we stopping? Well, you're not president anymore. And he said it dawned on him because the motorcade never stops.
Right.
Everybody had to stop in the motorcade. And then this was one of his first rides where he's been driven somewhere. He's like, wait, why are we
what's happening? I mean, if it stops, it's like, what's happening?
It's like, sir, it's a red light.
It's a red light.
He said, he was like, oh, I have to stop at the red lights. Isn't that funny? He was like, because he said he was sitting in the back and he was going somewhere, and he was like, why are we stopped?
Well,
like,
and think about it. If they stopped, it was because there was a problem, right? And so it's like,
exactly.
And so instead of like, now we can't run red lights. Yeah, that's awesome.
So it's really funny. I love the interviews that he's doing.
And I would say if you're intimidated by 700 pages, there are so many good interviews. There's so many. He's print and television interviews, radio. NPR did a really nice one.
Yeah,
you can really get.
I mean, he's already did Oprah. He's already done Gayle King. He's done all the big names. He's already hit those shows and so forth. And he's such a down to earth. I don't want to say down to earth. But like, again, he just understands the human aspect of everyone, and that everyone is important on whatever level they're on. There's still some importance to that person. And you get that from them,
Well, yes. And I think it's interesting to see how he sort of, because I'm actually currently sort of doing, in another realm of my life, doing research on how do you bring together intellect and intuition. And that we currently are in a society that really values rational thought, which is very important. And we see what happens when you don't have rational thought. But intuition and feeling is also important. And so we're seeing this sort of back and forth, and even in our political life, of people just saying, well, this feels true to me. Right. And it's like, well, you have to have intellect and intuition. So for a long time, we denied the intuition, and now we're denying the intellect. So anyway, just to frame that, is to look at how Barack Obama grew, how his personal development, right? It's like when he was not a brainy kid, right? He said he didn't, if when he wasn't with his mother driving him to do well in school, he kind of goofed off, and he liked to, he talks about his friends that he played basketball with, and that even now when they see him, they're a little bit like, that's the guy we used to, hang out with and shoot hoops, and
Was
and
it
go
he
surfing.
or I'm trying to remember if it was he that said it or Michelle that said it. I think he said that, because of his family, that he really developed really deep friendships with his friends.
Yes,
Almost,
because
sisterhoods and brotherhoods. And to maintain those and how they maintain their friendships through the
Right.
White House, being in the White House,
right.
and so forth.
So I would say he started out as a person who was probably very grounded in his body, right? And it's just like what feels good. And he talked about Michelle talks about he walks slow because he walks Hawaii slow. That's being in your body, right? But then he got in his head and he got interested in books and reading. And even before he went off to college, he talks about he bought up, he started reading, and he was trying, and then he became very intellectual. So by the time he gets to college, now is he's he's got some hey baby moves, but his hey baby moves are let's talk about feminism, and they're like I just want to get laid. So it's like it's like even his friends said, dude, you just need to go get laid, right? And it's like so so then
are we talking about our former president?
I've got all kinds of things to say. We'll have to do a rated R version one night. I'll talk to you about my insights from putting these two together.
Follow, email, all of that at
I will give you my slightly dirty thoughts.
Leading women uncut.
Exactly. So, but he said he would just spend time by himself, and he was really in his head, right? And that he had to bring those two things together of being connected to people and being, in the humanity of it, and then the intellectual piece. And that's when he really came into his full, into his full, to me, power, in that speech, right? In that was it 2004 speech when he, but it is, So anyway, I have thoughts putting this.
Okay, now some of these viewers are unaware of Angela's background in the. Do you call it erotica?
Oh,
what is
it?
Yeah. Look, yeah. Y'all don't know. Y'all don't know that side of Miss Stalker, okay?
I have many sides.
Definitely go down that wormhole with her.
Yes.
It's something and I don't mean like erotica, like just uncut. I mean, like I keep telling y'all, the woman is pretty much a scientist.
I said I research everything
and the science of all of this, and so it's no shocker that you will notice that even about hold on, I got to put this up there. Even about our former president.
Well, look, and I'll take a short trip down erotica lane, and it's that there's a therapist. She's a relationship and sex therapist named Astaire Perel. It looks like Astaire Perel, and she's fabulous. If you're interested in relationships of any type, I recommend that you follow her. She's got podcasts, very interesting. She's got books, but she's taken that word erotic, right, and said, we all have an erotic life. And it says erotic is vitality, right? What is where do we find our joy and vitality in life, right? And so eros, right? So we tend to think of that as just sexuality, but really it's a life vitality. And so again, I'm going to take anything, I will science it up and almost make it too boring to tolerate. But the point being is that when you look at memoir, to me, when I'm looking at memoir and people, a lot of times you're watching them come into their vitality, right? And it's like I have this piece and this piece and this piece, and once they integrate them, they're able to do amazing things, and it's because they're connected to that piece of them that makes them feel alive, right? So when Barack Obama is in college and he's studying braininess, learning makes him alive, makes him feel, vibrate in his body. And he's seeing these girls and he's like, he's thinking that would work.
Well, what's the word? And I always say it wrong. So I'm going to grab my Google. Sapiosexual?
Sapiosexual. Yes. Sapiosexual.
Okay.
Yeah. And I don't know.
Okay. Of a person finding intelligence sexually attractive or arousing.
Yeah.
A person who finds intelligence sexually attractive or arousing.
And absolutely, I would say that's my kink to use the term, is I really like braininess, right? We got to be able to talk, right? We got to be able to talk about interesting things, and and I think that's where Barack and Michelle were able to come together. And I was like, now if you were 20 and you were trying to talk to
and not knowing what that
Barry
was.
Obama, if you had gone up and started talking about something really brainy, that would have been but it's because of vitality, right? And so really all of us are seeking that. We're seeking vitality, and so to say it's an entirely integrated experience. And so I'm always looking for that. I'm always looking for that. And so of course but I will say I have also done erotic writing, what would be considered erotica, right? Which we would call maybe dirty writing. I have all kinds of stuff on that too. And
we keep thinking you're leaning in, so we keep thinking you're getting ready to reach for something and show us. And Tachi says you are so multifaceted.
I'm like, that's ADD, but yes, but and I think that it's So anyway, I have many chapters. I have Angela. The book of Angela has many chapters, and because then what I thought you were going to say that they don't know about my background as a minister. So it was like when I was a minister who then wrote erotica. I am multifaceted, Tachi. I am multifaceted.
There's so much, guys. There's so much.
Moving on from that, I wanted to
and
have
just to allude to everybody, just to let everybody know, we do have a book club side to Leading Women, and the hashtag Leading Women Read. If you want to go back to see some of the titles that we've already gone through, 700 pages. I want to listen to the president a little bit. So we'll definitely talk about it.
We'll be talking about this over time, and I feel like it's not the sort of thing that I'm just going to sit down and binge. I did with Becoming. I mean, I couldn't.
Yeah, you had to
do that fast enough.
Yeah,
this I think is going to be more of like you sit with it, you think about it, and so
because even on the audio, it's like 20 hours, right?
It's long, and he's a slow talker. You
not on mine.
You're like, and it's funny when I hear that, I'm like, it makes me nervous, but I've got another prop I want to throw in here.
Okay.
Right. Which is, I'm shifting our topics, but anyway, so this, if you can see my O magazine.
Oh,
right? This is the last print edition of O magazine.
How thick is it? How thick is that?
Not very.
Wow.
Yeah. And so this is it, right? 20 years.
That's the last.
I'm trying to cover my mailing address, but it probably doesn't matter.
I love that. I love the Volkswagen.
Isn't it? And it's like, and it's funny. Can you see what it says at the top? You don't get a car.
Is the car not one of the favorite things?
No, the car is not one of the favorite things.
Well, dang, why is she posing in the car then?
That she's driving on down the road, right? It's like,
I thought that would have been the favorite thing number one.
And no, so you don't get the car, but you can register. There's I think starting next week, every day you go on and you can win. You can win the favorite things. I'm trying to find where the photo shoot is. So here it is. And they've tried to feature Black-owned business. One of the things that they're doing, it's a cute little car, is they've made an effort, and there's a whole section in the favorite things where you can see where, if you want to support Black-owned business.
That interesting that a magazine owned by a Black woman would have to have an initiative for Black-owned businesses?
Yeah.
We keep talking about that. It's like, why is that a thing?
Right. So I just would. So anybody who reads I've been reading it, since it came out. Interesting. So they're talking about it going digital. What I find interesting, having read this from cover to cover now, there is not one mention of the magazine being digital. It doesn't tell you to go on Oprah.com.
And that's the same mistake that she made when she launched her channel.
Yep. It says basically, it says, as I look forward to this, nothing stays the same. Where is it? There was some, it's like basically it says, so
goodbye.
And it's like, and now we're on to the next thing, right? It's like we're on to the next thing. It must be with the
whole digital thing. Is it still O Magazine? Is this a way of not saying this is the end of O Magazine? Right. Because when you think about, and this is where magazines go wrong when they think about going digital. Now, keep in mind, I was trying to helping to usher magazines and newspapers into the digital 20 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
and they weren't ready to go, which is why I ended up starting Dryer Buzz, because they left, this open opportunity. But one of the reasons the magazine then has to go digital, it's not just taking what you had in print and putting that online. You literally have to change up the entire medium,
right?
Meaning that rather than the magazine being print, it now has to become radio. It now has to become television.
Right.
It has to become multimedia. Right. And Tachi, I'm gonna end. But where's Tachi? What are you doing right about now? Let me see if I can drop
because
her.
As she's doing that, I want you to look here. This is really the line, right? It's right here, other side, right? So stay tuned for our next adventure, right? So it says, it's been a great ride. Stay tuned for our next adventure. So I'm looking throughout this whole thing. What's the next adventure? And they kept saying, stay tuned. Stay tuned. Where am I supposed to stay tuned? How am I supposed to stay tuned? What am I looking for?
And like I said, that's where they made the mistake.
As a subscriber to this magazine, are they going to keep charging me to go to the website? The website appears to be free. Is it a charge? I've got no information, right? Now, a lot of times when a magazine ceases publication and you're subscribed, the company, I think this is Condé Nast, right, that publishes, will send
and let me just let Tachi know. Tachi, if you're still watching, I put the link in your inbox. Yeah. She is texting me either.
Please welcome us.
Tachi is always camera ready. So
yeah. But I mean,
be more
I was really shocked. I was really, really shocked that there's nothing in this that tells me what's next.
Well, like I said, it's the same mistake they made when she left ABC and went to OWN, is because if you remember when Howard Stern, and this is the only comparison I can have, when Howard Stern left traditional radio for paid radio, there was this entire campaign of getting people used to paying for radio, right? And Oprah didn't do that with her viewers to say, hey, now you've got to pay for our channel. Because if you remember when OWN first started, she said, if I had known, I would have been camera ready. Okay, I'm not camera ready. I can't believe she's not camera ready. But what she didn't do then was to get people prepped for, because when she first came on cable, it wasn't in your package. It was a premium channel.
Right.
So you even if you had basic cable, even if you had extended basic, you still had to pay that top level premium cable in order to watch. And then you could tell within the first cycle of whatever contracts they signed, they then brought it down to extended basic, and then it became a part of your normal cable package. But still, it left viewers who had cut the cord. Here we are, you're becoming a premium channel at a time when people are cutting the cord, right? So now you just put out your last digital issue and people don't know, like you just said, hey, well, what happens with my subscription? How do you not know?
It's Hearst Publishing. That's who publishes it. Because I'm like, I hadn't even looked to see, did I have any communications from Hearst, right? Because I'm like, don't I get an email that tells me? I'm like, what am I, how is this going to work? Right. So I wondered, part of what crossed my mind, which will be interesting to see, they have to do the print edition 3 months in advance. Now, the previous print edition, I showed the picture, I think on my Facebook, of Gail, and it had omag.com and Gail pointing at a computer, like, go there. And I was like, okay, this is how I thought this was going to be their campaign to get people, particularly people who are not used to going online a lot, to do it. But there's nothing. There's nothing in this. So I'm wondering if 3 months ago they weren't sure what was going to happen. And I went to this. So then I went to omag.com. I went to the Oprah Magazine website. There's nothing there. There's nothing there about our last print edition has been out. There is a subscribe button. Right. So I was like, well, let me see what happens when I click subscribe. And basically it says, we are no longer doing the print edition. That's it. And I was just like,
so you just been left hanging.
I was like, this is, to me, is strange. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. But it just almost feels like I was under the impression we're just going to make this a digital. We're
gonna try and get Tati on. I know we said we were gonna do an hour, guys. We our normal time is till 3, so we'll try and get Tati on audio. So that she doesn't have to rush. I even forgot my makeup today, but hey, it's one of those days. Let's when Tachi jumps in, we'll come back to that, because let's talk about shifting and pivoting as far as media is concerned. Television shows. I mean, just there's so much going on. If you remember, I think about this time last year, when we think about the movie industry suffered well before COVID, because you didn't know, you see all these trailers and you go to the movie, and the movie theaters like no idea what that movie is. And it's on Netflix, it's on this, it's on that. You just don't know where to consume.
Yeah.
And that's where we are, because people are leaving us hanging. I all of a sudden, they were trying to charge my card for my movie club. And I'm like, I didn't even know you guys were open, and you didn't even ask me if I wanted to resume. Am I ready to come back in theater? And I'm like, no, cancel that. I'm not ready to come back in theaters. Even though going to the movies prior to COVID, there still was only about 5 people in the theater, so it really wasn't a problem. But as a consumer, I don't know where to go to watch anything. The other day, I was sitting there, I wanted to binge watch the Christmas movies. And I'm like, I don't know whether to go to Prime, I don't know if to go to Netflix. I just don't know. I'm just like, hey, Alexa, whomever, find me a Christmas movie. But why? I don't understand why I don't know why things are falling apart the way they are. Why are people still dropping the ball when all they have to do is ask their audience? And you and I talk about that intended audiences all the time.
And again, because they've got absolutely wide open channels to go to social media or email or whatever, and just ask audiences, hey, even just to inform. I'll give you the example that I've had with this just recently is the last movie I saw in the theater was Little Women with
how long ago was that?
Greta Gerwig's movie. Yeah. So that would have been last year, right? I don't think I went to the movies in 2020 at all. Maybe I saw something else, but I think that was
Little Women. Was that beginning of 2019, I believe, right? I want to say like February.
No, it was towards
later.
It was later in the year, and it was and maybe it might have even been the summer. I think that Little Women was the last movie I saw. And because I was not able to get too many movies. But I really liked it. There's a certain genre of film that I enjoy, and it's Jane Austen, the Brontes, so any Jane Austen thing, any remake of Jane Eyre and Little Women, I will always watch this. And so I kept thinking, well, when is Little Women going to stream, right? Especially with the pandemic, shouldn't that be streaming? So finally, I was like, I kept waiting to hear that it was streaming. So finally, I went and looked it up. It's been streaming. No, there was no announcement made, right?
Really?
I'm looking for it. They didn't even make an announcement. So, anyway,
it's almost like if it doesn't go viral, or if it doesn't, then they don't talk about. Hey, Tati.
Hello. How are you, ladies?
Good.
We're good. We're crossing over into your lane now, trying to figure out this. I want to know your thoughts on Oprah and going digital, and not and her subscribers wondering like, okay, what does that even mean? And then I also want to talk about the award show that was just on. Like, how do we keep up? I know that you are adjacent, as always, film industry, film festivals, a lot of these things. But first of all, Oprah, what mistake are they making here by not letting people know where to go for this?
Not letting people know where to go. That's the mistake. That's the number one mistake. When you're about to, everyone is suffering now. The magazine industry has been suffering for quite some time. I heard you mention Angela Condé Nast, and there's so many magazines that have shut down. I remember years ago, and now the statistic has changed. I used to teach my student that there would be 150 magazines that would debut every year. Almost like 85% of them in the first year would shut down. Right, in the first year. And I remember having, like, there was one that Essence owned called Suede when I was living in DC, that was aimed at like Gen X and like at the time it was Gen X, like younger readers. And they had a couple that was fantastic. They had a couple of episodes. They had a couple of editions and then it stopped. Well, what people don't know is that it is incredibly expensive to publish a magazine. Just the paper alone, it's incredibly expensive. And you have to, most of the money in media is made through, not even most, almost all of the money in media is made through advertising. And so that's what these publications rely on, the sale of ads, because it's not our subscription fee. That little $12 a year that we pay does not pay for what it takes to maintain a magazine. So I understand needing to go digital because Oprah or O Magazine is incredibly expensive to produce. There's a lot in there. Even though she's Oprah, you're still a media company and you still have to get ads. So I see it. But what you need to do is at the same time you're transitioning, you need to facilitate a smooth transition of your readers. I don't know because I don't read O on the regular, so I don't know what the site is like. But if they're smart, then they would have already had a very robust presence on their site, a very robust email list to be sending little snippets out to people so they get used to digital, a very robust social media presence, which I think they have, but it needs to be, the messages need to be geared towards we're shifting so that people don't miss the shift. There'll always be those people who love a magazine in hand. I mean, I get it. I love it. But more and more, I'm like, okay, there's too much paper. I need to get rid of all of this. So if they're able to help their readers transition better, I think that it will be better for them in the long run because they're not going to be, most magazines that you see today, sad as it is, will exist mostly in digital form in the coming years. So I think that's where they're making a mistake.
And that's what I was saying. Like you said, you taught your students. I remember when I wanted to start Dryer Buzz. I mean, my hope was, to become a nice glossy salon magazine. And I was like, okay, that's just too big of a risk. And then when you see those numbers of failure, it was like, okay, my family was like, no, we're not investing in that. Let's try it another way. And that's why we went digital, and that helped to launch the whole blogosphere. But now let's talk. I want to ask you, because we don't know where to turn. Like say for instance, everybody's talking about the Will Smith, what was it? Prince of Bel-Air reunion, right?
Right.
All of these things. I don't even know where to go watch that. There was an award show on Sunday. I was sitting there, I was like, it feels like an award show should be on. There was.
Yes.
But
yeah. People's Choice. Yeah. Well, here's the thing. Again, People's Choice Award was on, was it Fox or was it ABC? I can't remember. I was watching it on an over-the-air channel. So I think that you have to look at where people are getting their content. And if they're not on a regular watching whatever broadcast network it is to be able to see the commercial, that's problematic. And I can tell you, and I'm sure all of you are the same way, both of you are the same way, that you're on social media 24/7 and did not see near a damn advertisement for the People's Choice Awards on social. And that's because the industry still does not respect digital and social media the way they should. Consequently, and they're wondering why numbers are going down. Well, nobody knew. We know, or I know, because I have to follow this stuff. And so I try to keep up on what's what. But, to reach the average person, the person you're trying to reach, you're in the wrong space. I saw nothing on TikTok. I saw nothing on Snapchat. I didn't even see anything on Facebook. That doesn't mean it wasn't there. But you didn't do a good enough job. If I'm someone who follows entertainment anyway, I should be getting these things in my timeline, and I did not.
Well, the only thing I saw was the Tyler Perry, and I was like, I thought maybe they'd gone out and grabbed a piece of viral video, and I was like, oh wait, that was at the award show.
But Tachi, this is what I was thinking about this O Magazine. I've been watching this, right? I've been looking for it, right? Since I heard that the magazine was going digital. So I have been actively looking for what their messaging is, right? To get me, the 20-year reader of the print magazine, over to the website. And so it is, like I say, I'm shocked because I'm scouring the magazine, right? And I'm going to the website, which I will tell you has been a terrible website. They've had that O Magazine website has been terrible
for
and
years.
Yes, and they've improved it a little bit, but it doesn't even seem like it's connected to the magazine, right?
At
So
all.
I mean, so to your point, it's like this seems like the magazine. Well, clearly the magazine was siloed, right? The magazine's been over here, and versus all the rest of whatever their outreach is and their platforms, their messaging platforms, because they have 100 ways, maybe not 100 ways, but they have 5 ways to reach me with this magazine, including putting it in a magazine, right? So I think that you hit it right there when you said the these industries in general, these old school media industries, do not respect particularly social media platforms, and to understand that many people now, that's where if I don't see it on social, I'm probably not going to see it.
Exactly. Right? And I love you, Miss O. The funny thing is when I was in high school, my nickname was Oprah. Who knew she was going to be around this long?
Right.
Because you're going to take her place. Look at, where am I? She's still around.
Look, how much do I love Oprah? Oprah lives in my bedroom, right?
See, exactly.
So I mean, it's like, I'm the one. Why aren't you trying to figure out how to get me over to the website?
Right. And maybe that was a thing. I think that they're looking at their readership, which skews a little bit older, right? We're talking about Gen X and above in terms of that. And so they're thinking, oh, well, they're not on XYZ. That's fine. I understand that. But you have a secondary audience that you have to look at, meaning the Gen Z and the millennials and the Gen Z, and also the Gen Alpha, whose mothers, grandmothers, etc., may be reading it. And so let me tell you who's done a fantastic job in my mind with this. Essence magazine. I understand. Essence has been around donkey's years longer than O Magazine has. I get it. But O has more resources and has more money than Essence does. But Essence, forget about Essence Festival, which is the epitome of everything. Don't even talk about that. But just look at the fact of what they've been able to do on Facebook Live since quarantine has happened, or since the pandemic, shall we say, because people are not quarantining. They have had all these live events, and they actually started doing that before quarantine. They've been doing a whole bunch of Facebook Lives. They're also on YouTube doing a bunch of things. They're doing these events. They're doing things with like mental health. They're doing things with artists. They're doing these Instagram lives. So they have really done a lot, not only to pull in the generation of reader who has known them since the 70s when they debuted, but to keep it young and fresh for this new generation of and then they've tied into things. Look at the movie Girls Trip. What was that about? A girls trip to the Essence Festival. That's what you have to be. You have to be all things to all people, even though you don't necessarily have to, but it's nice if you can cross over, and that is the case.
Yeah.
And then too, Oprah is coming off of it. Are we calling it a failure yet? The Weight Watchers tour, which people were still trying to figure out, like, what was that? She finished up the Weight Watchers tour, and then she did the Apple. She's on Apple,
right?
Pretty much doing the Oprah show. These conversations. It's almost as if, and as a matter of fact, everybody's having to rebrand now, and people are just truly missing the mark simply because they really don't know where their audience is or how to take their audience where they want to go. It's like, hey, listen, guys, we're going to be over here. Well, you got to let people know, and few are doing a great job of that.
Absolutely. You're right. There are very few that are doing a good job of that. And, the thing is, we can make excuses and say, well, they don't really know. Oprah is a legacy broadcaster at this point. She has been doing linear old school media for quite some time, but I can't let you use that as an excuse, because what you need to do is make sure you're pulling in, and I'm sure she's doing this to some extent, but it needs to be more. Pull in those people that know the social space, whether it's young people or because here's the thing, just because somebody is a lower end of the millennial or Gen Z does not mean they're proficient with social media. I have talked to a few this week that said, oh, I don't really use. So we can't make that assumption. That's not, so it's irrespective of age, but she needs to get people in that really like, I should have seen this all over the place, even though I'm not necessarily O's target because I don't read O. I still should have really
seen
gotten
something.
Seen something.
Yeah. Because you're not a traditional magazine reader reading O, but if they came online into a space that you obviously master, the digital space, they would capture you. And what we're finding out is there's no intent to capture us in this digital space, right?
Well,
so even though they're coming to the digital space, they're not coming for us. And as a matter of fact, on TikTok, I looked at somebody else has O Magazine on TikTok that has 3 followers. So unless they got it to try to sell it to O Magazine and they're just not up for buying it, hey, I don't know. But Tachi, I also want to ask, and I want to make sure I did not forget my thought, content-wise. How excited are people now that they have a new president-elect and first lady to talk about? Do you see any? What are we looking at as far as a renaissance? Because people are trying to figure out what 2021 is going to look like for media and for content. I guarantee we know the White House press corps is going to fill back up if they can. The inauguration is coming. Content-wise, media, film, we see oftentimes, whoever looks like Biden, whoever looks like Kamala, they're going to get a lot of jobs, in media. And what is on the media spectrum? Because I even have to consider coming out of retirement. It's like, hey, Angela and I, we're leading women. We're on the press list for the Biden-Harris administration. It's like, hold up, do we want to get back in this thing? What is it starting to look like on your end as far as all things you're adjacent to? We talked to you about being, how are you yourself, and so forth. But what does it look like media-wise? Is it time to go back?
So I don't know where you got this foolish idea that you could retire. Please, you cannot. That is nonsense. Stuff and nonsense. She's been saying that for donkey's year. Whatever, and Yalanda, that's not happening because you're just too valuable and too good in the space. And the same thing for you, Angela. We at this particular time, our talents, and I'm talking about all of us, are needed. We have been on the precipice of the dawn of the new digital era for a long time through either blogging, vlogging, at the dawn of live streaming. We've been doing this longer for all intents and purposes than the traditional linear media has. So we're needed in this space. And so I don't, unfortunately or fortunately, I don't think we could just say, oh, I'm not doing, no, we were the progenitors of this, so we have to continue on. So just throw that idea away, Yalanda. In terms of what I'm seeing, there are so much out there. This space there's so much buzz in this space. There's a lot of hopefulness because of the victory of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, particularly on the media's end, because that the previous administration really had it in for media. And it was their lives were just made miserable. You couldn't report. It was just terrible. So I think there's an exhaling by the news media, particularly when it comes to these things, being able to speak truth to power again. Not even truth to power, just telling the truth, just telling the facts and not quote alternative facts. So I think there's an exhaling there. But with that, there is a fracturing and a split when it comes to new media, when it comes to social media. What we're seeing is, let's talk about news now. So there has been grumblings. There's these grumblings that still don't believe that our president and president-elect and vice president-elect have won. So there are these grumblings of not wanting to give up. And so because Fox, has declared winners, as rightfully they should, they're news media, that's what we do. There are people that are saying, well, I'm going to One America News, whatever, at OAN, or I can't remember the other.
Newsmax.
Yes, that's it. Newsmax, exactly. Or I'm now going to Newsmax. And then there's this whole thing of people saying, and you've seen those of you that have like conservative people that are conservative wackadoos on your timeline in Facebook may have seen a form letter informing you that they are going over to the social. What is, you know what I'm talking about?
Parler.
The social. Parler.
Yes. PAL,
right.
which I'm like,
Yeah, go
I
ahead.
speak French, so it's outside. That's parlay, right?
It's
and I assume,
parlay, right?
But I believe that they're calling it parlor, like so anyway.
Like why would they know?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not really expecting very much from them. So, all right, well, so this fracturing, and I was reading an article the other day about this fracturing when it comes to this of social media. So people who feel that they can't, quote, have a true and open voice, cannot express ideas freely, that they're now opting for these other things that sound like what they sound like and align with what they align with, which, by the way, is not a new concept. This is something that we teach in communication all the time, that you align and watch the media, subscribe to the media that already aligns with what you think.
Right.
So this is not new. These people are not converts. They've always thought like this. So, the fact that we have now, it's not just far right wackadoos. It's also wackadoos that happen to also be Congress people, that happen to be, that are subscribing to this new way of being, which is interesting. And I'm not one to say there should only be one of X, Y, Z, but it's also dangerous because when you have something like that, that adds to the spread of misinformation. And it's irresponsible if you are a news person, if you are an elected official, whether you are far right or not. I think it's irresponsible to subscribe to that. So what I'm seeing is kind of a relief because of the election. There's a trepidation by some people. We're like, yeah, but we know that the deplorables are just around the corner waiting to, start some nonsense. And then also a fracturing of the media, because now there's such a mistrust of what we call mainstream media that those people who don't subscribe to it have now siloed into their own forms of media.
Yeah. And I will beg to ask this question: in a time such as this, why is there only one new platform when clearly, there is opportunity out there? If Parlay is taking advantage of it, why aren't we seeing others try to take advantage of this, fracturing where we are right now? And particularly, why isn't there one coming after this great 91% of Black women that just showed themselves during this election and so forth? Again, are we on the precipice of a renaissance of sorts? I know it's early, but it's quite right at the holiday season, and we got just a few more minutes left. You ladies want to give our audience any kind of predictions as we get ready to wrap up the end of this year, this last quarter here, as we get ready we got to go back for a runoff. We got to get ready for the inauguration. There's a lot to be excited for. Vaccine is no doubt coming. Even though, we're going to look at some things for the winter, maybe even a second shutdown, even if there isn't one, globally, we should be doing those things ourselves. Heck, I was listening to the radio and they were like, hey, come to Hawaii. I'm like, what? Literally, like, they were like, it's safe to come to Hawaii because Hawaii is looking at their numbers. Now would be the time that everybody would be running to Hawaii when you think of, the East Coast getting hit with our winters and all of that. So what type of renaissance do you ladies expect we might see, particularly as it relates to leading women? What's on the cusp for us?
Go ahead.
Every week I throw these kind of questions to y'all.
You saw me adjusting my chair, right? You saw me adjusting my chair.
Yes.
That's me. That's me when I'm really.
And that's only because we, as leading women, don't think about us enough.
Well, and because the first thing that crossed my mind is, well, we're going to be full of COVID by January, but I don't want to speak that into. I don't want to speak that into being.
So you're saying don't go to Hawaii or go to Hawaii?
Do not go to Hawaii. I don't know. Hawaii has almost been, just recently. Don't go to Hawaii, but maybe.
But they were on the radio today saying come to Hawaii.
Well, you know what? they say planes are very safe anyway. But I think that from a point of view of leading women, I think we're going to see more women spotlight on more women, particularly as we start to drill down. We're seeing it here in Georgia, drilling down into what happened, right? How did these states, particularly a state like Georgia, how did Georgia go blue, right? And we had a coalition of women, particularly Black women, but I also have a friend who was involved with South Asians and getting the South Asian vote out. That just the number of voters they registered through their South Asian initiative would have been enough to put Biden over the top, right? So I think we're going to start to see how grassroots leadership has come, particularly through women, and that particularly a state like Georgia has been ignored by the Democratic Party, right? The party, it's not the party mechanism, right? But it's local grassroots women. And many of these organizations have been doing this work 10, 20 years. And we're starting to see the payoff. So I think we're going to see a spotlight on what did they do? Because nobody's been paying attention. And let's start to dissect and analyze what they've done. I also feel like that there will be a lot of people who just think that they can just scoop it up and duplicate it without really tapping into the brain power and the experience of the women who did it. So I'm hoping that we're going to see pushback and say, I don't know, let's talk to the people who actually did this and see how we can implement this. And we may have procedures. In fact, we will have procedures that can be implemented in other places. I'm looking at you, Alabama, Mississippi, we're coming, right? So, it's like, and when I say we, I mean these women who are getting shit done, pardon my French. So that's my prediction, is that we're going to really key into these leading women. Like Stacey Abrams is the big name, right? But there's a lot of other women who have, again, just started at their kitchen table with their friends and said, we've got to do something.
And that really basically, when you think about the last decade, the number of women, if you look at the movements and so forth, they all started with women. The Me Too movement, it started with women, but there's a man now pretty much, and also with Stacey, with Black Lives Matter, all these things started with women, but women don't get out there and shout and boast and tell their stories enough that they go missing. Their stories go missing, their faces go missing, their names go missing, and you got to make sure you have those that are advocating, your evangelists that are saying, hey, no, let's go back to the beginning of that. Tati, you want to make any predictions?
Yes, I think we're going to start to see us tapping into the power of women. Let's take that 91% of Black women, tapping into the power of women to get other things done outside of government. And so let's go back to media for a moment. You mentioned, how can we tap into that 91% of Black women in terms of media? What I'm seeing is that there'll be more of a pipeline of encouraging women of color, women in general, to really get in the tech space, because that's when you will get these apps, these platforms that will speak specifically to our experiences and to the things that we want to see. It should have happened, but there's a big thing in front of it. There is a block in Silicon Valley, even though people think that tech is unbiased, is rubbish. It's absolutely biased, and technology is built by biased people. Therefore, tech has inherent bias in it. And so to erase that, I think we will see people, women in particular, tapping into the power of these women who have now just won in these different areas, in different races, different political races, to see what we could get done about spreading that power to other areas, particularly in media and tech.
There you go. And shout out, when you say tech, shout out to Angela Benton, who definitely is out, keeps that pipeline to Silicon Valley open. She, way back in the day, had Web 2.0 and some other things, and still very, very active in getting people in that pipeline. All right, guys, it's 3:00, honey.
I gotta go.
We have got to go. It's been great conversating. Thank you so much, Tati, for jumping on here with us.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me again.
Always. All right, guys, listen, don't forget, when we finish this, you can watch the replay. You can also catch it as a podcast. There's a link down there behind Tati. It's called Leading Women Weekly. com. You can listen to it as a podcast. We'll put it in your ear. The book again, we're going into the Obama memoir, 700 pages. All right, volume 1. Volume 1. And he also, in one of the interviews, gave a look at the Obama Center that's going to be built in Chicago. So please go find that interview and find out. And again, holidays are upon us. Angie and I have to decide I think we decided we were going to do next Wednesday, right? All right. So we'll be back next Wednesday. Everybody have a great week. Bye.
Bye.